3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
System and Soul, I hope you're having a great day and your day's about to get even better. I got introduced to my friend Reggie Brock, who's joining me here today through a mutual friend, and we just hit it off. We had a lot of similar passions, similar energies, and I thought, man, we got to have him on for another conversation and let some other people listen in. So Reggie, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us, and give us a little background on who you are and kind of your career journey.
Okay. Well, Benji, I appreciate the opportunity. I noticed pretty early in our conversations, there's a lot of alignment in terms of our real concern and interested people in their well-being. And so for me, just that time we spent together meant a lot. So for us to continue this conversation is great. Now, I apologize that for some reason, my grass guys decided to show up at 2:30 in the afternoon.
That always happens. It never fails. All good.
Yeah. So just in brief form, I'm a preacher's kid. I was raised in a preacher's home, and I thought that was my destiny in terms of career. I went to Bible college, and I was headed down that path, and got married early, and in the denomination that I was in.
How early? Like 12, 13?
Yeah, I was 6. And I'm from Arkansas, so add 2 and 2 together, probably you can see how that all kind of fleshes out. And so we stayed married for 5 years, and she decided it wasn't, she didn't want to do this life and left. And in my denomination, you divorce, you need to find a new career. And so I did. Got in the insurance business, spent 25 years there in about every line of business that you could, be a part of and build a business off of. And decided one day I'd had enough of that. And I went into roofing and spent 14 years in roofing, and found out I could sell roofs and I could train people how to sell roofs. And it led me finally to a career for 5 years in distribution with a major manufacturer. And through that whole time, I never lost the sense of caring about people's progress. I might be selling something, but in the back of my mind, I'm going like, dude, if you could just twist this screw this way instead of that way, you're probably going to get a better result. And you just keep doing the same things over and over and hoping for a different result. And so I would speak that life into people and go like, try this, try this, try this. And eventually about a year and a half ago, I decided I want to just be in people's life and help them any way that I can in this season of my life. And to do that, I need to do it by myself. And so I left the big career I had, and it's been a journey it's been fun and enjoyable, and seeing people's kind of lives take on new dimensions and me feel like I'm having an opportunity to contribute to that. So it's about people and their progress for me, and how can I pour into their lives in an effective way that's going to help them attain something that they've been fighting for, just going about it the wrong way.
Yep. Has that taken the form of like an executive coach? Is that what that looks like?
Yeah, I thought about that was the case, but what I've realized is that no matter what role that people have in companies that they're in, we're people. And so there's a lot of specialists that just really focus on personal development for leaderships. And there's and I just didn't want in a crowded space. And so for me, I'm like, I want to approach what I do to an entire company. And usually it starts with leadership, to kind of creating the space where people can talk and feel comfortable. And, but I really wanted to cascade my message down through the rank and be able to allow people at every level of the company to be able to benefit from personal growth, not just leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know your passion project that you're on now. We'll save that and come back to it, because I think you're onto something with that. I don't think we talked about it first time we met up, but I am as well a preacher's kid.
No, I didn't know that.
Also got married when I was 20, not 16, but 20. So pretty young by today's standards.
Yeah.
I warned you, we always start off with what's a crazy story or crazy fact. What you got?
So this was easy for me. In business in particular, I met Mark Cuban in 1995, and this was before Mark Cuban was Mark Cuban as we know him today. He had just kind of started a little company, and it was called AudioVox, I think. And our paths crossed unusually. It was in the mid-90s that the internet websites in particular kind of kicked off. And I had a friend of mine who built hardware, and so he asked me to go on a call with him, and I went in, and the call was with the Southeastern Conference. I'm a huge football fan and college football in particular. And so, he had his account was the Southeastern Conference. We walked in, and they wanted to build a website for the men's basketball tournament in March that year in New Orleans. And they were looking for a price. And back then, Benji, man, you could about put any price on a website you wanted to. People were paying lots of money for those things. And the only technology that even made a difference for people was flash technology. It's just, it's just like a little movement in the site. It took an online brochure into something that people were freaked out about. And so the guys that I were working with had done flash technology for about a year, and they were like, we can make this thing cool. So we got to the office of the SEC commissioner, and he said, build us this website. How much do you want? And I just blurred out, well, we'll do it for free if you'll let us monetize this site. And the owner of the company goes, dude, have you lost your mind? And in the middle of this meeting. And so I told him, look, let's do this. We'll build a website. All you got to do is introduce me to your corporate sponsors, and I'll sell them crawlers. You remember the old crawlers across? Yeah. And so I was in all the major corporations by their invitation. And we sold like $350,000 of crawler ads over a 4-day period. It was stupid. And so that Monday after the event was over, I'm back at the office. My phone rings, and back then we had secretaries, and she came and she said, Reggie's a guy on the phone named Mark Cuban. Well, I'm going to condense this story. I fly over. He sees this, and he goes I'm a big IU fan, and I pipe through the internet off of these T1s or DSL lines he had at that time. He's like, I pipe all the IU basketball games to my house and listen to them on my computer. I'm wanting to do this for a lot of people, but I don't want them to have to pay for it. I saw what you did with the SEC. Can you do that for me or show me how to do this? I'm like, who is this guy? So we fly to Dallas, and I meet with him. Long story short, he comes to me after it was we got back. The owner of the company said, this is the craziest guy I've ever seen. He has no idea. So Mark calls me back, and he says, you want to do this? And I said, look, the owner doesn't want to do it. And here's where the story gets interesting. He says to me, good. He said, I didn't want the owner. I want you. He said, I think me and you can partner together and sell this deliverable for all the colleges, let them pipe their games over the internet, and then we'll get corporations to pay for it. Okay. So I went to my wife. We had a 2-year-old son at that time, and I got scared, to be honest with you. So I called Mark back, and I said, I can't do it. So here's the last thing he said to me. I'll never forget. It rings true into my ears today. He said, listen, he said, Reggie, you will look back over your life one day and realize this was the worst financial decision you have ever made. And he hung the phone up on me. 7 years later, he sold to Yahoo for $6 billion. And so now, look, there's some iterations I know that went on, and, he had some different partners come in and things like that. But, that was probably, now that I look back, this guy owns the Mavericks. He owns, he's a gazillionaire, and you just never know who you're going to come across that one way or the other could influence your life dramatically. Now, most people say to me, are you heartbroken about that? And I'm like, no. What I realize is that I know how to get into the room with the right people. One of the big mistakes that entrepreneurs make, in my opinion, is downplaying the importance of the room. Who's in this room? What is it that they actually are doing? Do I have a complementary set of some sort, whether it's product, services, or personality, that lines up with that? And they're just afraid, like I was, to take a risk.
Yeah.
And so that taught me more than anything else. And I've done a lot of things, but one thing that I've embraced from having that experience with Cuban was, if you're not willing to risk, you really are not interested in a huge reward. Mm-hmm. And so, but no doubt about it, I flip every Friday night. I see Cuban on Shark Tank. I go like, oh my God, there's that constant race back to the mid 90s.
I think the risk reward thing is interesting because there's what people don't talk about when we see all these extreme people, whether it's an extreme athlete or entrepreneur, like they are sacrificing a lot, and it's things that most normal people are not willing to sacrifice. And for most of us, that's smart. Like, we be extreme on this, but we wouldn't give up our marriage. We wouldn't give up our relationship with our kids and our community just for that price tag or that fame or whatever that is. And in their case, it was worth it. The risk, including the sacrifice, was worth the reward. So I appreciate crazy people because they push me a few degrees, even if I see them way over on the other side of the pendulum. I used to be intimidated by that. Like, oh, I don't want to listen to them because they are crazy. They are extreme. And over the years, as I've matured and chilled out, I'm like, wait a minute, I can learn from them, and it moves me a few degrees, which is probably good for me. I don't, they're sacrificing things that I'm not willing to sacrifice, but they're moving me a few degrees, which is always good. It's interesting though, because we're talking about crazy, and you've got a thing about crazy. So take us there.
Well, I think the borderline of crazy is the beginning of creative. So to your point, man, look, we're headed on a course, all of us are, and a slight variation can take us in a totally different direction over from a distance perspective. But the fact is, if you don't change course at some level, you just go where you've always been. I tell people this all the time: to go and do where you've never been or never done, you're going to have to do things you have never considered doing before. I love what you just said. It's not like this 80-degree, 45-degree alteration of path. It's maybe a degree or two. Well, that degree or two is risky to someone who has never got off course.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's taking one chunk at a time. And so what I encourage people to do all the time is just let your mind run. I don't care what the problem is in business or family or wherever it may be. Let your creative mind run a little bit to where you almost say to yourself, well, that's crazy. And then you maybe have to pull back the reins a little bit, but it ignites something in your brain that creates that 2-degree alteration in course, potentially because you're thinking about and at least being willing to be a little bit dramatic in terms of the shift so that you can get something different out of life. And so to me, the borderline of crazy is the beginning of creative.
Yeah. How do you foster your crazy?
I got a wife. I mean, it's like, man, dude, I'll run fast and long and hard and then talk about it. And, we've been married for 34 years. And then, like, at times she's like, the Cuban thing, she was the one that told me, you need to do this. I was afraid because she saw the alignment. Like I love sports. I have an understanding. Now I had delivered a product at work and she goes like, go. And I'm like, I was scared. I was like, no, I got a 2-year-old. I can't leave you. I'll be on the road all the time. But then we all have to surround ourselves with people who understand our crazy and will help us without restraint. Just hold us back a little bit and put a little bit of pressure on us to go like, hey, great idea. It's like you can say yes. And I always use this, yes, and. So like, that's a great idea. I'm in a program right now that's called Positive Intelligence. I think you're familiar with it. And one of the things he said is everything everybody says, at least 10% of it is right, whether you agree with it or not. And so I just try to put people around me that may look at me and go like, well, 90% of what he says is not like, it's like feasible, but there's 10% of something we can work with together. And so I have put people in my life who create not really restraint, but really just they facilitate real deep thought and understanding with the way I kind of operate and move.
Yeah. I like that. People that appreciate your crazy. That's really good. The other thing, the word that you've said a few times is alignment. Yeah. And one of your personal principles is the power of we. Talk about that.
Yeah. So I'm a team guy. I played sports growing up in high school and college, and I played a year or so in professional football. And I always noticed that victory was generally found collectively. Now, I could have a great season individually, but what I realized is that the guys around me, if they did not do what they were supposed to do, the talent and the ability I had, I couldn't capitalize on. And what's happened in our world today, dude, we're moving apart from each other as quick as we can. I feel we're isolated. We're working in silos. We've got this ideal of, okay, for me to win, somebody else has got to lose, or if they win, I lose. And golly, it's just pushed us apart. And so what I really believe is that we've got to pull people back to the center. How do we get the great me's confident and trusting of a we group? Like, if you hire great talent in your business, that is a great thing. But if you can't get them to unify, there is something that's produced in unification that can't be done individually. Think about that. So like when my wife and I married and we had a child, it was the two of us who made something new.
Yeah.
So you cannot produce something by yourself as impactful as something you can create with somebody else. You can create something new by introducing somebody else into your world to produce something that neither of you could have got by yourself. And so what happens is that talented me's run out of juice, like hard, press, hustle, all that world like voice in us going like, you just 10x this and 40x this. And all of a sudden you reach a point where you go like, I got more juice. But if you're in collaboration and connection and you're a part of a we group, doesn't mean that your talents and abilities need to die. It means no, they need to be DNA'd, if you will, with some other people. And all of a sudden, bam, something is born that was never possible individually. That's a we group to me.
Yeah, 100%. The struggle that I find, coaching people through that is the psychology of where they find their value. I've always found my value in doing these things. And if I'm going to do it in a collective, then my role, thus my identity, has to change. And that's a shift that some people are either uncomfortable with, and on the extreme, some people just can't make the shift.
Well, and that's what we're told. It's like we're told, you're better not trusting and not being vulnerable and not being collaborative because you're going to get hurt. I mean, people are going to screw you over. It's just when. It's not a matter of if, it's just when. So that mindset resonates in I think the world as a whole today, to where we're just like me and mine and to heck with everybody else and every other thing. And so what we know is that in the business world, the top results come from the most engaged workforce. And engagement means belonging. If people feel like they belong somewhere, you ain't got to beg them for results. They feel obligated to the we to produce the best that they have for the collective good of the whole. That's a powerful thought. If we can get people to start thinking about, look, I want more, but I think I can get more by us and by we and by supporting and collaborating with one another. Once that happens, the world looks different. And we just don't have it. I mean, it's just like, it's not there. And so I'm not saying it's not there, but we're in a very fragmented world right now, and people are afraid of each other. And we're divided. I mean, we're just divided. And it's just like nobody wants to trust anymore. And, we're just disconnected at the very root level.
All right. So you got to clear something up for me, because you're talking about the power of we, you're talking about the collective doing more together, but you have a fascination with the number one.
Yeah.
So how do those go together?
So the number one is relative to changes that I want to make in my life. What I found is when I look at my life and I'm not comfortable with the result, and I start thinking about how do I change that result? And I've got 15 different people telling me different techniques and strategies to get that change to happen. And eventually I get so exhausted with lists that I just go like, forget it. And so what I tell people all the time is one step at a time, one habit at a time. One's my number because we get easily overwhelmed because I look in the mirror every day and I say, good God, you can change this. Then I start thinking about this internal dialogue starts rattling in my head going like, oh, you think that's a problem? How about these other 4 things? And I get overwhelmed.
Yes.
And then what I decided was, how about I just knock one of them out at a time? Like, can I do that? And sometimes I fail on the one, but I'm so focused. And what I have found is that once I accomplish that one ambitious goal, there is something, I don't know how it happens, but it just creates a level of confidence that I can attack the second one.
Yeah,
and sometimes exactly. It's that momentum. And I start believing because I've accomplished one thing. So to me, the one for us or for me is just like, what's the one thing? Quit thinking about 10 things. Our whole company is built around that one. And so it's like, what's that one? If based upon the category we're discussing, what's the one thing? What's the one thing? What's the one thing? Don't worry about the 10. Just focus on the one.
Yeah. I love that. And we do a leadership exercise that is very like convicting in terms of exposing the gap between where you are and where you want to be as who you want to be. And I just like quiet the noise. I'm like, all right, we got to pick one. And then the word I use is what's the micro action? Because where I go wrong is I'm like, I'm going to change this, or I'm going to go, I'm going to do 2-hour workouts every day, or I'm going to fast for the next 2 weeks. No, it's just like, what's the micro action? Like I'm going to do 10 push-ups before every meeting, right? It's something small, something manageable, but it starts to create that movement, that momentum. And that is everything when you're trying to do something big.
Yeah, no doubt.
So
let me just say this. Here's what we believe. Big change happens one step at a time.
Yeah.
And that's the philosophy I really believe. That stuff that has been impossible for me, it just starts by taking one step in that direction at a time.
Yeah. So tell us about that one company and the work you're trying to do and the micro surveys and all that. Super fascinating.
Yeah.
I think you're relatively new on your journey, but it's driven by passion, and it's obvious that the need's there, and it seems like you're getting cool results. So talk about it.
Yeah. So everything we've discussed on this call is what we do. It's like we believe that we're better together. And so everything that we do with companies and individuals is drive people together and give them a reason why. Like why would we want to trust again? Why would we want to be vulnerable again? We do a lot of discovery, like asking people, what is the one thing you're struggling with that if you accomplish this, life for you and others around you changes? What is that one thing? Just one thing. And then we have discussions where, we have a call every week that is just people in the same places, battling with the same struggles. We get together and there's this collective unlocking. Listen, man, this is probably going to make me unpopular with some people, but I've been the guy who's traveled and spoke at different events. I've done all that. And what I realized is that usually I'm like a sugar rush. Like people come and they hear me, they get excited, they get fired up, but they leave and do nothing about it because there's just nothing tangible and actionable about it. And so what we have found is that when there's this tribal approach that's more like all of us are battling the same things, and rather than Reggie coming in as the guru or the expert or somebody else coming in, we get people in a place to where we encourage them to trust their instincts. We encourage them to trust their voice, and we ask them to pull out what's in them and share. And so one of the most powerful things we do is get people together and let them hear from one another. And so it's not like my voice or somebody else's voices, but it's the community's voice. How are we addressing issues that were similar to all of us? And how can we help one another? And how can we unlock things in one another that help us grow? And then, our whole philosophy is built around, we want to identify problems, help people to identify problems. We want those problems to be revealed to management and leadership. And I'll pause and say this very quickly. We've been told for years, do everything anonymously. Like, just let people, like, they're going to fill stuff out, Reggie, but you can't put their name on them. And like, that is so, to me, ridiculous. It's like, it makes no sense, because what we have found is that most people want what they feel to be heard. They're just afraid to have the conversation. Yeah. So when they write it down, knowing that we transfer that to leadership and that we've created safe space with the leadership so that there can be open communications. I call it doors and windows as opposed to walls. And so we just give them a peek into these people's lives, and then people will tell you whatever you ask them. And it's been very healthy, and it's created a connection with leaders, management, and then all staff, to where there's this sense of, my God, we can talk about this and it's safe. And it's like, and as a result, I feel like I belong. So kind of everything we've talked about, we just put into practice on a regular basis. And, our whole company, that one company was built off the ones. And so we just focus on those one things to help make people, number one, create personal and professional progress. And secondly, create we groups that are powerful, sustainable, and become a force.
That's amazing. Well, you are a sugar rush, and I'm glad we had one on System and Soul today. But I love that you've taken the sugar rush and you've turned it into something that people can go make applicable. So we'll put the link, that one company, in the show notes. You can go find Reggie and his organization. And if you do need somebody to come in and speak, you should look into him, because he is a good sugar rusher. So, where is that the best place to connect with you? Is the company website? Yeah,
that onecompany.net. Let's see. And they can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn pretty easily. I'm pretty active on social media, so they can find me there too.
Awesome. Reggie, thanks for sharing your passion and wisdom with us today.
Benji, thanks for having me.
All right. See ya.